a lot of our features are web-based and they require an internet connection. So I want to make sure that all of us watching this are connected to Wi-Fi, and I'm sure a lot of you are, but at least let me push the buttons and just quickly talk and show where to go and make sure we're all okay. Snap-on Cloud, this has been around approximately 18 months. When we launched it, it was mainly for two things really: pre and post scans being automatically populated to a storage cloud facility. All right, and then in a nutshell, in one sentence, that was what it was about. And then when we launched it, I don't think we thought that it would be quite as well perceived, if you will, from a customer's point of view as it has been. It's gone down quite well, so much so that I know that Snap-on per se are obviously investing in developing the cloud feature. All right, so we're going to get into that if you was unaware of it. It mainly, well, not mainly, but partially came along because we're starting to see a lot more of a trend where independents, body shops and so forth require a pre and post scan to validate to get paid, certainly from an insurance perspective, for our body repair specialists, right? I can certainly remember many moons ago, obviously I've been with a company now for sort of 13 years, but when I was back in a workshop, I heard rumors, where perhaps, the car would go into the repair center and customer would drop it off, come to collect it, everything's hunky-dory, and then all of a sudden he'd say, well, actually, when I dropped it off, there's this wrong with it now, and it wasn't like that when I dropped it off. And, you've got that sort of issue there, haven't you? So I guess they're just trying to tighten up braces and do a pre-scan, date, time, codes populated in said module on that vehicle. And then we do a post-scan, obviously, once we've completed our job. Hopefully there's no codes and they've got another date and time stamp associated. Also, from a invoicing perspective, if any of you are watching this as business owners, it looks a bit more tangible than a handwritten paper. Again, I know it's a while back, but I can remember writing a trouble code on a scrap bit of paper with the invoice, and it never really professional. I'm sure there's some other things out there, guys, that you may or may not use, but if you didn't, this cloud's pretty cool. And like anything, it will evolve because we're adding features to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my cloud account up, okay? Because obviously I've set my account up, and I'm going to show you how to do yours if you've never done it before. And we'll go through some of my reports. So that'll be very soon, because obviously it's the first thing we're going to do after we just briefly run through this agenda. After the cloud, it says in brackets FCA. That stands for Fiat, Chrysler, and Alpha. These, as an umbrella, are the first manufacturers, however you want to address it, that about 3 years ago now, it's about 2018, I think it was 2018, they had an issue. I think it was a Chrysler Jeep from memory in the US, where basically one of their vehicles was hacked into by a third party, and it caused the vehicle to deviate off the road. So what they've decided to do now, Fiat, Chrysler and Alpha, is fundamentally grab another ECU and put it on the vehicle's network. And that extra ECU is a gateway, and it's a gateway to accessing diagnostic information. The only way you'll gain access, or certainly from Snap-on's end of the fence, is you need to create an account, and that is utilizing the cloud account. So I'm going to show you where to go on your Zeus to set this up. And the beauty is, because it's a PC, the Zeus, right? It's all integrated into the products. When you click the hyperlinks, the web page opens up. There's some real good stuff on our website about this as well, which I'll get to shortly. So yeah, we'll set the cloud account up and from our end, and then when you're at that stage, you then need to create an account with Fiat, Chrysler and Alpha themselves, okay? It's on their website themselves. You then need to purchase a fee. There's a fee associated to the duration that you require access to these vehicles. The minimum requirement is 24 hours. Last time I looked, about a week or so ago, it was €3. You can purchase quarterly from memory. You certainly can purchase annually. You might be watching this as a Fiat, Chrysler Alpha specialist, and it may be something you might want to look at as an annual purchase. But from an everyday independent repair shop, if you are watching this, I would think 24 hours for €3 isn't too bad. I'm led to believe as well, when you purchase your 24-hour access, the access starts, is dormant, if you will. If you purchase it, i.e. and do not communicate with the Fiat Chrysler and Alfa, it stays there in your bank, if you will, until you obviously communicate with the vehicle. I want to address it quite strongly though, and I'll tell you why, because a couple of things. One thing is, just be mindful that if a little Fiat 500 comes in for a service, it's highly likely, if you've not got this gateway set up, you won't be able to put the service light out. So something as simplistic like that, you might think, yeah, you know, nice quick job, and it's a good, you know, service-wise, it's not a bad little job to do, right? So you might think, excellent, in and out, job done. But obviously the service light's going to be on if you've not got access to the gateway. Our software will actually advise you if you've not gained access. There's red text at the communication process on the scan tool, on the Zeus. It will say gateway's locked, it has a gateway and it's locked. If it's unlocked, excuse me, if it's unlocked, it also tells you on the software. All right, so just be mindful of that. The reason I keep going on about it really is because they are the first, and notice I said the first to enforce this facility, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing some other manufacturers inherit this principle, all right? Because over the years, it's become a little bit more accessible, shall we say. And, you know, we haven't even talked about the future yet, and, you know, things that may or may not, but certainly are open to debate, happen in the future regarding automotive technology. So one thing is for sure, networking vehicles, we've got EV, haven't we? We've got ADAS, advanced driver assisted systems. So we've got a lot going on that may have to tighten our braces if these all become networked. All right, so this is, I guess, Fiat Chrysler's Alfa's way of saying we're kind of underpinningly sort of authenticating you, vetting you, making sure you're okay to access our vehicles. Please bear in mind when you set your profile manager up on your Snap-on Cloud, which we'll get to in a sec. Once you've done that, as I said, you go to Fiat Chrysler and Alfa's website. You have to deal with a third party now, guys. And when you set your account up, they'll want things like your VAT number, registered business, name, address. And where I'm going with that is when you submit that information, I have heard from customers an array of different reply responses, as in, I haven't heard anyone been declined, but what I have heard is the duration of the time they get back to you. I've heard a week, I've heard a couple of weeks, okay? So be mindful, you might want to have a bit of lead time before they get back to you with consent. The other thing that I've actually should have put on number 2, but it's just come to me, is something called Diagnostics over Internet Protocol. So JLR and Volvo are the first 2 manufacturers to change their protocol. When I said protocol, think of that word basically as language, French, German, Italian, right? And yeah, so they used to use, Volvo and JLR, a standard protocol really, as a lot of other manufacturers do, called UDS. BMW, VAG, they use UDS. And yeah, so Volvo and JLR have switched over to Diagnostics over Internet Protocol, mainly because it's a faster communication process. And obviously, as the vehicle's technology, as we just discussed, is evolving, more modules being put on it. They're obviously trying to think of smarter ways to make the vehicles cope, right? Now, again, they are the first 2 brands. There may or may not be, I don't know, but they're certainly the first 2. If you're watching this and you have a black in color, your USM Bluetooth module that communicates with a car, if that's black in color, that is DOIP enabled. So everything I'm saying, you've got covered. If it's red in color and you purchased your Zeus a little while back, you may well find it's a red one. Okay, so it's just food for thought. It's not the end of the world, guys. It just means that if you plug into a JLR or Volvo, you may notice that some of the functions or functionality of the software is limited, as any scan tool would be, unless it was DOIP enabled, okay? So like functional tests, resets, injector coding, regens, stuff like that will be missing. They won't be there. Okay, so Volvo and JLR, all right, they're the first 2. So again, if you've got a black module, you're all good. Everything's all okay. And if you've got a red one, food for thought for the future, if you have any issues. Controls and basic setup, we're going to dig into that. If I'm totally honest, guys, when we used to do this in Classroom, there's so many settings and functions and features in the software, certainly in live data, I can think of loads. But as a customer, and based on 2 hours I've got with you guys, I've tried to think, well, you know what? A lot of our web features are quite important. So we're going to go in the system settings. We're going to run through some of the information in there, show how to back up your data. I think that's important. And get connected, which is your cloud, secure vehicle gateway. And I'll show you my cloud, as I said. So we'll do that. Then we're going to speak about and show you guys fast track intelligent diagnostics. This was a unique feature of software associated to Zeus initially. It was launched initially on Zeus. It is on some of our lower end platforms. I'm sure you guys know Zeus is our flagship product. And then we're going to take a look at the oscilloscope. Now, this is, and it always will be, I think, arguably one of the biggest assets to any scan tool, all right? And it's one of those things, I think, as a technician, we're either okay with it or we're not really, you know, don't want to get into that. When I used to do this in the classroom, the amount of times, the whole afternoon used to be about the scope. And the amount of times you say, right, guys, let's get all our leads out of the kits and let's look at the scope and let's talk about it and set it up. The amount of times all the accessories are still in the bag. The problem is like anything, as we sit here today, I'm sure you guys watching this would totally agree. But back in the day when I was last in the workshop, you could ring up Eurocar Parts or whoever you're dealing with, check the fuel pump out, chuck it in the Merc, see if it ran. If it didn't, send it back. Well, I'm sure you're watching this thinking, yeah, I know where he's going with this, but half the time now they're wrapped and sealed in bags. And certainly if you buy it from your OE, pick on Mercedes, you can't send it back, right? So we need to make sure from a diagnostic point of view, we've tested it. And today, without a doubt, the imminent way to test the integrity of any component, we should be using the oscilloscope. We should test that component under load, not disconnect it or unplug it, and use the scope to test its integrity. So we're going to look through the scope. What you cannot see if I look to my left, it's because my Zeus is right next to me. I have some cool little software and we'll emulate, I'll show you, mirror my Zeus screen on for you guys, right? And I've got also next to me here a waveform generator board. These are available through the franchisee network. Franchisees can get them. But yeah, they basically emulate components on a car. And I've got my oscilloscope test leads out connected to my waveform board. And I'm going to emulate a component on a car using our scope. And we're going to go through all the blank canvas settings, all right, to give you a bit of an overview of the oscilloscope. Then we'll take a look at guided component tests because it will go hand in hand, because if you have not or unfamiliar with this scope, hopefully when we get to number 6, I'll alleviate some of that pain, because 13 years ago we started testing engine manufacturer, make, model, year, engine code specific tests, and they are all preset. All right, so a lot of the pain has been taken away from an end user's perspective. All we need to do is read the test and look at the waveform integrity, the little squiggly line, if you will, on the Zeus, and then relate it to what we are receiving from the vehicle when we're testing. And then we're going to look at how to, something that may or may not be familiar to you guys. Every software bundle, we add some extra features in there, and they are, as they read, guys, they're tutorials. They range from 5 up to 20 minutes of automotive technology under different topics, anything from AGM start-stop technology right the way through to hybrids. EVs in there now, you've got the 48-volt stuff, parallel series hybrids. There's volt drop classes, there's oscilloscope tests, there's accessories, CAN buses in there, bus arbitration, error handling, board rates, all the geeky stuff. We're going to have a quick look at that. That'll be probably very much towards the end, probably pushing 9 o'clock. And then we're going to look at SIS, if any of you are unfamiliar with that. Snap-on information system is a full sort of OE, sort of very damn close to repair information suite. It requires the customer to be on a subscription service. So without a doubt, you need to be paying for your software to benefit from it. But try and think of it as I just said, really, it should have, and it has everything from cylinder head tightening sequences, torque factors, oil viscosity, API rating, quantity of oil, wiring diagrams, TSBs, OEM campaigns, recalls, test plans. There's some cool stuff in there. What I'll probably do though with number 8, I won't be a separate identity. So what I'll probably do is incorporate number 8 in with number 4 when we get into intelligent diagnostics, because from my end and the time frame we have, that'll fall in nicely in number 4. And then last but not least, everyone must be able to hear me because no one's put their hands up or question or anything, but if you'd be so kind, just because I've got a lot to get through, you guys, and I really do want to get through it, to make sure that you're all okay. So very end, hopefully about 10 to 5 to 9, I'll try and leave sort of 5 minutes or so for any Q&As. If I cannot answer the question on the spot, the beauty is of Zoom, it will receive that, I get it out of my account, and I'll come back to you via your emails that you've registered through, okay? Right, on that note, so introduction. So I've already introduced myself, as I said. So this picture denotes, that picture in the background there is King's Lynn, Norfolk, here in the UK. It represents Snap-on Diagnostics Division. That is who I'm employed with. The Diagnostics Division, these guys do anything associated to undercar equipment, really. So if you think of class 4, 7 ramps, brake rollers, gas analyzers, aircon, wheel balancers, that sort of thing, right? And then of course our handheld scan tools. And then if you notice, which I'm sure most of us watching this, because I was an avid customer of Snap-on, that's for sure, that white truck there, that's our franchisee network trucks. We have around about 430 now in the UK. They derive from Kettering in Northamptonshire. So that's the hub. They represent Snap-on Tools division. Tools really is the mothership, certainly in the UK. I know, as I said, US-owned company, but in the UK, Snap-on Tools is the mothership, and we're a subsidiary, a small division, if you will, okay? The picture there was actually taken, as you can see, really, 100th anniversary, so that's an even number, so you know what, it's last year. So that was taken last year. We celebrate the 100th anniversary, and that was also for the Queen's Award for the innovation of SureTrack. So SureTrack's incorporated intelligent diagnostics, or fast track intelligent diagnostics, I should call it. So we'll have a look at that and explain a bit more about that. So introduction, which takes me to this. You know, at some point, I'm probably not going to stop talking, am I? So I think from my end, just make sure that you've obviously identified that this is Snap-on's UK diagnostics website, and everything that I'm going to talk about within reason, unless I deviate, the features certainly that I'm going to talk about are on our website. So you can see I've mentioned DOIP, Snap-on Cloud, Secure Vehicle Gateway, Vehicle Coverage Guide. Okay, though I'm not going to talk about that, it's worth noting that every time we do a software update, what we call a bundle, which is generally every 6 months. So on your scan tools, on the assumption you're watching this on your home screen at the bottom right corner, mine next to me has 21.2. That was launched in April this year. And then in October, we'll have 21.4, and that's a bundle. Okay, now there is occasions where we have what we call a software service release that's released in between those 6 months. And that might be because something's changed within the vehicle. We pick on DOIP, that might be a reason. Okay, we've had to cater for a different protocol for a different manufacturer. So sometimes you will see them appear. So yeah, Vehicle Coverage Guide is on our website. If you go up to diagnostics, this is a picture of the website, top right corner, hover over there, there's a coverage guide icon. I want to address that because we used to, the franchisees used to have a hard copy book, and every time a software launch was launched, they had these books that the customers could obviously identify what's been added. And as a consumer, you guys watching this, I would want to know where and what we've added every time there's a software update. So we do obviously keep the website updated regarding our software updates, so please have a look on there. You go into the software coverage guide, there's a little button that says what's new. And what we've tried to do is pick out a load of nuggets, I don't know, BMW 5 Series, injector code and regens, adaption, key program, or whatever it happens to be, radar, sensor, camera, calibration. But the cool thing now is you can actually filter yourself, so you can actually choose make, model, year, and the system associated to the vehicle, and it will give you little key markers to identify what functionality we have. Okay, so it's pretty cool, and as I said, it gets updated every time we do a software bundle. Okay, so there's our website. Now, if everyone's so kind to hang on to the bitter end until approximately 9 o'clock, give or take 5 minutes or so, you'll receive, if I'm totally honest, it'll probably be the end of this week, hopefully next week, middle of the week at the latest, mainly because I do these all week and I wait until the end of the week and then I collate them all in and then contact the IMI. So what you guys will receive is an electronic copy only, guys, but it still goes towards your CPD points. So if you're a member of the IMI, this is a professional development certificate, and you can upload this in your account. So like I'm an IMI member, you log into your account, there's a button under CPD points, you hit upload, this is electronic, you upload that as proof that you've attended this, and it will go towards your CPD points. And might add, guys, these are free to attend, these Zoom events, and you can keep coming back if you want to keep putting your CPD points on. Okay, so anyway, that's what's going to happen at the very, very end. As I said, it will probably be sort of middle of next week, hopefully at the latest. Check out your emails though, certainly your junk emails, and God forbid, hopefully they're not sitting in there. If there's any issues, please email in to the email that you registered through, UK DSD trainings, customertraining.com. Okay, right. So, which is then going to take me to, we better look over at my Zeus. Right, where are we? Here we go. So there's my Zeus. Right, so in 21.2, also, while we're looking at this screen before I navigate away, software updates. I need to address this quickly, and I'm sure the bottom right corner, you've seen this where it says a software update due. Click here, you then download the update. Once you've downloaded it, you then need to install the update. So please be mindful of that. I've had over the years a few customers, not necessarily the Zeus, I don't think it was a Zeus, but I have had maybe been the Verus Edge before the Zeus. But I can remember a few occasions, you know, I'd be in customer training and they would switch a device on. We're talking about the updates through the Wi-Fi, and I vividly remember one customer in particular. We'd launched a new manufacturer. I think it was Jaguar, so it might have been a few years back now. I can't remember, but anyway, irrelevant. The point is, we'd launched a new manufacturer, and he came on training approximately sort of 3 or 4 months after we'd launched it, and he'd had his machine on. He just left it on permanently, as most customers do. It's a PC, where I just leave it on permanently, and he'd left it on. He'd downloaded the software and not installed it. So subsequently, he'd been losing out of a new manufacturer and all those different prospects and potential money earners, right, that he may have lost out on. So be mindful of the bottom right corner. If it says update due, click it to download it, and then make sure you click it to install it. Okay, so Wi-Fi and Snap-on Cloud. So very quickly, I don't want to spend too much time. I'm sure some will put their question in at the end. Over here at the bottom right corner, straight on my home screen, upon booting the machine up, I've got my landing page, or a home screen, if you will, of our Snap-on software. In the bottom right corner, I've got a Wi-Fi symbol. If there's a red cross there, I've got no Wi-Fi. Now you can tether this on your mobile phone, so just click on the Wi-Fi symbol. There'll be a small delay. It's already appeared in my Zeus, but it was going to obviously project that on my PC. So you can see that I'm on a Sky router there, okay? So obviously it's just going to give me a list of different hotspots to connect to. Double click on the relevant one that you desire, and then there'll be a little white box appear in this same window, and the virtual keyboard will open up. Pop in your password, hit OK, and then you should be good to go. Okay, then you should be faced with this little nice white clear Wi-Fi symbol instead of a red cross. Okay, so Snap-on Cloud. Now, what I'm going to do is very, very quickly, if I then come up to, so let's assume, which we will end up doing at some point shortly anyway. Where are we, guys? Right, so this here is my Snap-on Cloud account, okay? So all I've done, hypothetically, let's assume that I've just been into a live vehicle. I've got my Snap-on Cloud account already set up, which we're going to show you how to do that in a sec. And we've just obviously scanned the vehicle, and completely wirelessly, as long as I'm on Wi-Fi, guys, and I've got a subscription service on the Zeus. When I do a code scan, you've got two options. You've got pre-scan and post-scan. So on the assumption I've not touched the vehicle, I do a pre-scan, and that report will populate in this cloud, which you're now looking at, okay? And then obviously, from as I said earlier, from an invoicing perspective, you know, maybe you just pop your head in the office, you've done the scan on the Zeus, whoever does the invoicing, hey, you know, I've just done that code scan. This account could be open on a PC permanently. Just refresh the page, the report appears in the page. You can download this locally to a PC or print this directly from the account setting, or they can even from their PC, of course, attach this and send it as a link in an email to a customer, maybe looking for pre-authorization, you know, I've just scanned your vehicle. Remember, there's a date and a time stamp to these reports. And I'm looking for authorization. Can I have an hour's labor to check out your P0302 misfire, whatever it happens to be? Okay, so there's some good reasons for this. And as I said, as you'll get to in a sec, this is starting to be evolved. We're starting to add features to this. So this is a pre-scan, post-scan, as I said. There's a load of reports down here. It is worth noting, actually, while I think about it, if you do a screenshot on your Zeus, okay, so if you just take a digital screenshot, that is also submitted to your cloud account. So when I scroll, you might notice now and again, these are all reports, as you guys can see, but as I scroll, there might be the odd picture. That's a picture I just gone past. There's a picture. All right, that was a Corolla. I think there's a radar calibration, camera calibration I was doing. Anyhow, you'll see this in digital images. I'm sure I've got some. There you go. There's one there. I don't even know what that is. Test network connection. A few other bits and bobs. Okay, so these are all saved to my cloud account. In case you're wondering, very quickly, I got asked earlier today, if you press and hold the S button on your Zeus for 5 seconds, you'll see some icons appear. If any of you are watching this from the right-hand side, they'll come out the side of the software. At the top of that, the little buttons that appear, there's screenshot, camera, virtual keyboard, brightness. What I've done is I've chosen the S button. The Snap-on S button is right at the bottom of those icons that comes out. Touch that, and then you can change what you want the S button to do yourself. And I've chosen a screenshot. So just quickly, if I press the S button, did you hear that, guys? So it's just taken a screenshot of my home screen now. And then hopefully, he says hopefully, if I refresh, see how good my internet is here. There you go, guys, look. So my name's Steve Fox. Obviously, there's the date, guys, look. That's strange. Well, I've got the wrong time. Ooh, I'm bad. I've got the wrong time set. That's my fault. I've got my account set up at the wrong time. I need to look at that clearly, don't I? Okay, but there's two screenshots that I've just taken are actually there, right? So I don't know, let's have a look at one, right? So if I click on here, it's just going to bring that up as a still photo. However, if I come back and look at one of the reports, if I look at this one, click that button, it'll open up as a PDF. Now notice, guys, I've put no extra information into here. You can see I can put technician. All I've done is I've just put the minimal information required, really. Just put the business contact details in. Make, model, year, of course, has been pulled from the vehicle. We're going to go through that in a second. And a date and a time stamp associated, all right? So as you can see, this is PDF. I can print this from a PC. I could obviously locally store it in my PC under the customer's file if I have such thing on my PC. Back to the file. So over here, look, there's a paper clip. Touch that, send via email, copy to clipboard, and send via text is grayed out because I'm on my PC. If I open my Snap-on Cloud account, my mobile phone, that would be blue instead of gray, and you can then text that as a hyperlink. Down the bottom here, we're starting to add some features. So over here, keywords is a relatively new feature. Notice it's got Zeus, that's my serial number. Vehicle system report, this is a pre-scan that I've saved. Okay, so before I've touched the car, I've done a pre-scan, and it had all these fault codes in it. There's the VIN number. Obviously, this is a demonstration vehicle because we're on Zoom. 2009 407 9HZ 1.6 diesel. So where I'm going with this over the next sort of 6 months or so, if you start using this, you're going to end up with a lot of reports in here. And you can add tag keywords to your reports, okay, which is where I was going with this. So what should we put in here? I don't know, sticky brakes. And then, as you can see, it attaches that as a keyword and it tags it onto the report. So when I then come back up here, and let's assume I then come back from this, I then go to my search engine, because now I've got 1,000 of these reports, and I'm thinking, oh, you know, I can't be doing searching through all of that. So if I just type in sticky, there you see, so it's brought that report straight up. Okay, so now you can see, you can add there's favorites folders here, right? Shop files, my files, you can keep personal instead of sharing them. There's some cool stuff coming as well. So this will no doubt evolve as we move into the next few months or so, certainly. All right, and you can see, as I said, look, you can download 3 dots, wherever they are, even a digital image, download or delete, okay? Right, so where do we go to set this up? Actually, you know what? If we come back, get rid of that, I'll utilize this. So there's a couple of bits I want to show you. I think I did see one. There was a Corolla calibration. So yeah, there's my Corolla scan. So there's a calibration report. So ADAS, Advanced Driver Assisted Systems. Whilst I'm on this, I might as well just talk briefly about it. But yeah, so what's happening in 2015, a lot of the manufacturers via FATCHM stipulated that to achieve a 5-star rating, safety rating, they had to install 2 mandatory ADAS associated safety systems. So, you know, that could be ultrasonic, right? Park sensors, that could be blind spot monitoring, right? Whatever it happened to be. The point is, that was 2015, had to have 2 of these on. Now in next year, 2022, the manufacturers have been told they've got to put 11 mandatory systems on. And a couple of them which, you know, will be potentially daunting. One is an alcohol interlock system device of some description, will be breathalyzed before the vehicle's going to run. And the other one is a speed governor of some form. However, I'm led to believe you'll be able to turn those off. But still, the principle is they will be on the car. And I've already said earlier, you know, in the future, when we start looking at Wi-Fi, 5G cellular network, eventually they'll no doubt be networked, and I can see it in the future. I don't know if it'll be my lifespan, but you know, there's a few targets and few goals. I'm sure you've seen a lot of publicity around zero emissions, how the goalposts have moved rapidly regarding that. You know, there's lots of manufacturers now that have been tasked with autonomy, level 5 autonomy by 2030. There's a lot of vehicles now that certainly from an EV world, I mean, JLR quite recently publicized the fact that they think that in 2025, 60% of their network fleet sold revenue vehicles will be EV. So you can see already there's kind of a trend coming along, and then they'll be networked, of course, that's the plan, all right? So advanced driver assisted systems. So as you can see, guys, we can do, this car was, it's actually my company car. I've got a hybrid Corolla, and it's got a radar for adaptive cruise on it, right? So obviously I follow the vehicle on the motorway. I stick it at 70, stick behind the other car, press the button, take the foot off the accelerator, and obviously that will try to maintain that speed dictated by the vehicle in front. If a car obviously comes in between, myself and the car in front, my vehicle will obviously slow down and it will maintain a set distance. And obviously if that moves out, back up to 70, right? So there's a radar for that principle, and it needs to be calibrated. If we remove the bumper, if we put an aftermarket bumper off, if we affect the steering geometry, if we replace a ball joint, that's right. All these things have an impact on ADAS as a whole. And really the vehicle should be forward aligned first, and then it should be calibrated via a form of calibration. Some vehicles are dynamic, some are static, depends on the variant, okay? Anyway, I'm deviating a little bit, but anyway, so this is a report, okay? I've done a camera, I don't know if it's camera or radar, one of the two, irrelevant. Okay, right, so I'm deviating. So controls and basic setup. So let's just go over to controls and basic setup, because this will explain a little bit more about this. Right, system settings, get connected. This is where I'd like to, if you haven't already, spend a bit of time. You must be on Wi-Fi, as I've already addressed, because here is what you're going to need. You're going to need this information, certainly the serial number for both Snap-on Cloud setting up and Fiat Chrysler and Alpha secure vehicle gateway. They're going to want the serial number of your Zeus unit when you generate your account with them. So this is where you're going to find it. Yes, it is in the back, okay, on a little label on your unit, but if it ever gets pulled off, agitated in the workshop and it's gone, it is in the software. You need to be on internet, system settings, get connected, all right? And it's also worth knowing, if you're not on the internet, these are grayed out. So these are no longer, there's a numeric and letter-based value, all right? There's nothing there, okay? So I need to be on the internet. So I need the PIN and activation code for my Snap-on Cloud account. Start at the top, we have a profile manager. This is for your secure vehicle gateway access, right? You need to set a profile manager up, something that differentiates you with our scan tool to talk to, if you will, Fiat Chrysler and Alpha. The next one along is us saying, hey, go to our website and we'll show you what and where to go to set up the Fiat Chrysler and Alpha website information, the FCA, get authenticated with them. All right, so that's the next one. And the one after that is the third one down, which is our reporting, our Snap-on Cloud reporting, what you guys have just seen me show you. All right, so that's altusdrive.com. Now notice as I move my cursor, we go from a triangle like so. Excuse me, I've just clicked it accidentally, profile manager was loading up. We go from the triangle, if I move it there, sorry, yeah, a little pointer. If I move it down, it goes to the hand. It's a hyperlink. If I touch it, as it just did, it will open up a web page. Because it's a PC, which is great. It'll just open up the page and it starts the process for you. All right. So that's where I was setting up my cloud account. Okay, so it's going to ask you in your Snap-on Cloud, your Altus Drive at the bottom. It's going to ask you your name, address, 3 security questions. It's quite security conscious, and email address, of course, mobile phone number if you use your mobile phone, of course. All right, but food for thought, definitely have a look. It's a cool feature that we're obviously going to add features to. Right, let's move on to back from here. Paired devices. Now you shouldn't need to go in there, I pray and I hope anyway, but it's a Bluetooth interface scan tool module. All right, so the Bluetooth module you plug into your vehicles, that is paired by Bluetooth. I don't think you'll have a need to go in there. The only reason is if I'm honest, if we need to flash the hardware on it, so when you have a software update, ideally you should plug. So the scan tool doesn't update, okay, on its own. So we're on Wi-Fi, I'm a subscription customer. The unit downloads a service bundle, you then install it. And then the Bluetooth module should really then be plugged in via USB to the side of the Zeus. There's a cable in your kit. There's only one, looks like a Type-C USB port, goes in the base of your Zeus scan module. The other end goes into the USB port on the side under your rubber boot. Doesn't matter which one, guys. Plug that in, there'll be an audible noise, the module will power up, all right? You'll see your LEDs light up green or blue. And then, yeah, then what you do is you hit paired devices, and then the third icon along the bottom, peripheral manager, reprogram, and it will flash the module. All right, but then a franchisee, if you've not been doing this, most customers seem to use the franchisees to update the software. But I wanted to address that you guys can do this. Obviously, you've got a PC, so get the download straight to your unit. And then hardwire it in, and then flash your module might be a good practice. Although actually it should do it on its own when you hardwire it into the side of the Zeus. It should come up saying update due, update now, sorry, and you hit now and it does the flash. But you can force it if you wish to, just there. All right, so paired devices, like so, third icon along the bottom, peripheral manager, flash module. Okay, next one along is where I'd like to spend some time. If you was unaware, set up as much information as you can in here, because any reporting that you do, documentation reporting from the Zeus itself, is going to have all this information associated to it. All right, so I've just got shop name, etc., manager's name, email, okay, and so forth. All right, so populate all that, and then hopefully when you do not, if you don't change premises on a weekly basis, which I'm sure most of us do not, you shouldn't need to do that, obviously, until you change premises. Data backup, I'll spend a couple of minutes in here. You may or may not have noticed the bottom right corner every now and again, a message come up and it says, back your data up. You might not have seen it because it might be switched off. If I just go to backup, backup settings, backup settings, mine set to never. All right, obviously it's irrelevant because I work for them, but you guys, in my humble opinion, I'd set that to every week, and I'd do it every week, utilizing the feature, because when it reminds you, when you come back to it, whenever you see it, you're going to make a conscious effort to hit okay, and it takes a few seconds. It's only kilobytes, these files it saves, they're not massive files. But I will address it because over the years, again, you know, it's certainly worth considering. And at the end of the day, they're PCs, and God forbid if you do have an issue, this way you'll have it backed up, all right? And also, there's something else I'd advise you doing. Personally, I would buy myself a cheap USB stick, because I'd hate to see, as I have seen over the years, the odd customer that's lost all his data. You know, if you start relying on all the old vehicles you're plugged into, get a little 1 gig USB stick, pop it in the side, and I would also do my own copy onto the USB stick. That way, God forbid, if there's an issue and Snap-on has to take over the Zeus and then reflash and your hard drive and wipe it and reinstall our software because it's corrupt or there's a virus or something, you then lose all those vehicles you've been tracking in your scoundrel software. If you have the stick and you've been updating it to the stick as well as the Zeus, you've then got your last copy on your Zeus stick, haven't you? You pop the stick in and you can drag all that over. And a lot of customers are unaware of that. Very quickly, going to show you where to go. So I would stick it every week, press OK, job done. Right, if you go to backup in here, it'll say at the top, we don't want to read it. It's going to save everything that you guys do, right? Backup file name, it's going to be the date and the time. And the SNA is the file format, totally relevant. Select your destination. The hard drive is a solid state hard drive on the Zeus. It's partitioned in 2 halves, C and D drive. It's telling me it's going to put it in D. I can't choose that or dictate it. The reason is because C is where our software is. It's separate the two. So if I hit D, okay, succeeded. Right, now I'm saying that that's backed up, but it's backed up to the Zeus itself. I want to take that file myself and put it on a stick, yeah, completely independently. So down here, second button in from the bottom left, desktop, lift the software suite up. Now, I've just got to move my icons around a bit here now. I'll bring that down. Right, top left, shop stream user, double click that. And then bottom left corner, you can see there's the partitions of the hard drive. I'm not interested in all this. It said D. Press D, and then you can see, look, I've already been doing this today, showing other customers. Right, today is date, look. So there's our file we've just done with the time. Hover over it, look, it's 6 megabytes, guys. Everything I've got saved on mine. Right click on that. Scroll down to copy, left click on copy, USB stick on the side of the device. Personally, I'd use the blue one, in case you was wondering why there's a blue and a black. The blue one is a dual port. It's a 2.0 and a 3.0. If you purchase a half decent PC today, pretty confident they'll all come with 3.0 USB ports. The data transfer is very, very quick in relation to 2.0. All right. So use the blue one, pop the dongle in, it will take a couple of seconds, and then pop that file over to your stick. And then, God forbid, as I just said, any issues, you've got all that information in your stick. And then all you need to do is, let's assume it's all been wiped, there was an issue, something was corrupt, had a virus, and then you pop your stick in now, and then I'm going to go to data backup, restore, continue. All right, now obviously I've got to put that file back in its location that you see I had it in, that I've taken it from. All right, continue, and it will pull that over. Okay, latest file. Excellent. Right, code scan, there's a timestamp associated to that. I'm showing you it, but I wouldn't turn it off. I like the fact it's got a timestamp associated to my code scans. Certainly if I wanted to prove something with a customer or validate or look professional from an invoicing perspective. Auto VIN is a new feature to us. What we've tried to do is a point of communication, scan module, vehicle in front of me, plug it in the vehicle, key on, nothing else. It's going to try and automatically ID the VIN. And I'll be honest, it's pulled from mode 9 into EOBD. We used to do a seminar in EOBD, a couple of hours. EOBD is pretty cool. There's a lot of cool stuff in there that I think customers are a little bit uncertain about. And mode 9, in a nutshell, is the vehicle credentials. Things like the protocol, VIN number, chassis number, quite a bit actually. Depends on the year of the vehicle though, I say that. But anyway, sort of 2001 petrol, 0405 diesel is when it was kind of compliant and legislated. So, but a newer vehicle, there'll be some cool stuff, a lot of information in it. But what we'll try and do is take that from mode 9, because it's the ABD. Sadly, depending on the vehicle year, it won't always work. All right. So you can turn that off if you wish by clicking that, of course, to off. But as I say, wherever possible, it's quite a nice feature. And like anything, as the years roll on and the older cars start falling off, we'll end up with a nice newish market out to us all. And eventually the older stuff will start falling off. Right, fast track intelligent diagnostics, bottom left corner. And then I'm going to go into scanner. Right, you'll see these screens, these little black screens appear now and again. In case you was wondering what they are predominantly for the franchisee network, because they're obviously demonstrating this out in the field. It's to help them really when they're talking to customers. So I've got into demonstration. I'm going to choose my Peugeot. It's going to revise me. I'm in demonstration mode. Automatic ID and manual is going to try and pull all the credentials from the vehicle wherever it can. Again, this is incorporated in the engine control module, and some vehicles are not there. It's going to pull the VIN. We've got the VIN, let's assume make, model, year. And then mileage and the registration, relatively new feature to us. So mileage, we try and get that from the instrumentation cluster. Excuse me, and then obviously populate our registration. Okay, so we're just going to populate a registration in there. So do you know what? Let's put in Rex. Right, JJ. Okay, so do a list of scan modules? Yes, I do. Right, at this point, if we've got communication and we're on subscription, hopefully you'll see it says service resets and relearns. And what we've tried to do here is retrieve all the common denominators from each control module, which we're looking at in this example. And we tried to put all the common service resets and relearns under one icon to save the customer having to navigate into each separate module to find said requirement. All right, so hypothetically, let's just have a look at this one, and you're going to see these appear. So EGR, replaced injector, brake bleed. All right, so you get the idea, DPF region and so forth. That's the idea. We try and retrieve it and pull it. Code scan, right? Let's go to code scan. We mentioned this pre and post, so ideally I've not touched the vehicle. Should really do a pre-scan. And as I said, don't forget, you know, there's lots of independents that request this, certainly from a body repair specialist. And if I'm totally honest, I wouldn't be surprised. This is not formal, guys. This is from me to you watching. I wouldn't be surprised if in the future we are tasked and they actually make us do this pre and post, simply because of ADAS. Okay, so if you're going to adjust some suspension geometry, or ball joint, a track rod end, think of what I've just said, you know, anything simplistic, take front bumper off, we need to obviously document that, right? So pre and post is going to be the way to go. So into pre-scan, continue. Now keep looking at the end of this scan. There'll be a quick flash. There it is. So two things that happened. One is that saved this scan from this vehicle locally on the Zeus. I have to press one button as a report, which is next to my ID right here with this car. See it down the bottom, guys? I'm hovering over. It looks like a little folder with a car in it. Press that once. I could now discommunicate my scan, discommunicate with the vehicle. This vehicle report is saved locally to the Zeus. Okay. And because the black screen flashed up and I'm on Wi-Fi and I've set my account up in my cloud, it's also submitted to my cloud account. How do I know that? If I look at my report here, there's a tick. Okay, so it saved this report to this vehicle's job card as a PDF, as an attachment. If there was not a tick there, it would indicate that it's only saved it to this. And I would think at that stage, I'm probably not got a good Wi-Fi connection, or I'm not on Wi-Fi at all. But the beauty is when you come back to Wi-Fi, this report will have a blue fill in and a tick. All right, and it was submitted to the cloud. So again, enter as much details as you can here. All right, and you can just see that printable. You can add an attachment manually. So if I'd taken a picture on my Zeus, a digital photo of the near side rear quarter panel because it was scratched when I went out to the vehicle to collect it to get it in the workshop, I could then attach that digital image and I could attach it down to attachments. Then at a later date, bear with me, if I go to the house at the bottom left corner, go down to history, go up to the word search, you can then type in the registration of that vehicle and it'll pull that report up. And then obviously you then got a quick reference to decipher what actually you did in that date and time on that same vehicle, okay, that's come back, right? Okay, so back to intelligent diagnostics. So back to here, I'm going to choose under two codes, P0087. And then you'll see there's a major delay. I'm already on the Zeus. Right, come down here, give it a try. So this is our landing page to fast track intelligent diag, and this was launched, as I said, on Zeus. And you know, as it says here, it's important we're on internet because it says connected. Great. All the other codes, see this drop down here. I want to address this because I've had a couple of customers say, well, do I have to go back up here and choose a different code from the code scan and then come back to this screen? No, they're all in there for my code scan. I just got to choose the drop down, choose the code, and then all the data will refresh based on the chosen code on our landing page. Okay, but I'm going to stick to P0087. Right, over to the top left, TSBs, so technical service bulletins and OEM recalls. If you was unaware, as I said, this is a repair information suite. This icon is going to take me into the information icon on your home screen, except we're already in the vehicle, so it's going to populate that information. So this TSB, this one with the red circle, tells me straight away on this vehicle, on this fault code, I know I have a TSB and a recall. And I want to address that. This vehicle, that fault code, I have a TSB. If there's a green tick there, then you're all good, not applicable. But I want to address it because certainly the previous machine, we had a Verus Edge. It had TSBs and recalls, but it didn't have fast track intelligent diagnostics and it wouldn't filter that out. And you might have to look through 30 or 40 TSBs. I can remember we had a Golf. It was a 2012 1.6 Golf. Can't remember the engine code, guys. I can't. It was a 4-digit one. Anyway, it had an umpteen amount of TSBs. And obviously, with a fault code, you got to look through them, and that's time, right? So with this, it's going to tell us straight away, number one, TSB or recall related to that code. So I'll obviously click that now, right, and it's going to take me to. I don't want to do that because I'm conscious of time. Over to the top repairs graph. So this is associated to something called SureTrack. The top repairs graph in our example, in the case of us in front of us, if we have other vehicle technicians in the field that has given us job cards from fixed vehicles in the field, once we QC them, we put them on our server. And what you're seeing here is a representation of other technicians saying, hey, on that vehicle, that fault code, we've seen this before and we fixed it with, and in this representation, we've got 3 faults, 3 common denominators, if you will. Over the left gives me the quantity of repair orders that we have. And over the bottom here is the mileage of the vehicle. So as a quick look, I have around 98,000 miles of my Peugeot in front of me. I would suspect, please note that I said suspect, probably going to want to replace the injector. I still need to test it, don't I? I still need to look at live data, check the wiring, all the principal things we should be doing before we condemn it. But nonetheless, it's a bit like ringing up the Peugeot department, the main dealership, perhaps, and saying, hey, you know, I've got this Peugeot XYZ. How many injectors have you sold? 30. That sounds like that might be feasible then. But it doesn't say, please put one on it. All right. So in our case, we've got 19 examples. If I come down with the mileage and look at maybe 16,000 miles, yes, replace the fuel pressure sensor with 8 examples of the technicians fixing it is the more prominent, but they are quite close together, aren't they? Okay. So smart data, pre-filtered, pre-populated data parameter ID list. All right. So think of inputs and outputs from your control module, whichever module you're looking at. Our example, we went into engine, didn't we? So this is going to give me a pre-filtered parameter ID list based on this fault code, if we have that. Again, the cool thing here that I'll add is that, you know, I mentioned the software bundles every 6 months. This information comes from our server. So like anything, our server gets updated frequently. So, you know, there might be a couple of occasions where you plug the car in, that doesn't happen. But believe me, a week later, or even overnight, there's a possibility that might suddenly appear. So this is, in general rule of thumb, when you retrieve a fault code from a vehicle, a general comment, this guys, but generally you only need about 30% of the live data to analyze associated to the fault code. You don't tend to need the other 70. If we pick on a new Volkswagen, or certainly a year or 2 old, you look at the engine management data, it's unreal, the quantity of PIDs in there, inputs and outputs, right? When you have a code, you have to decipher, you know, are they any good? What is good? What does good look like? What do I need and what don't I need? So the idea is, wherever possible, we'll try to do that for you. In our example here, if I click into smart data, must be on the internet, vehicle must be up to temperature or idling. Give it a try. Yes, ignition's on. And I'm running, right. You'll see that all the parameters would normally be both sides here, and I'll have to scroll. Take a note of the 2 blue ones, right? The blue flags, 2 blue flags. That means we're watching the live data values, and we know if they're any good, okay, or bad. So we've got rid of all the stuff we don't need, left you with the stuff we do, and then we've said, hey, these 2 here, we know what as good looks like, if you will, right? And in a minute, they should go red like that, which indicates red flag, red value means that's an issue right now and it's out of tolerance right now. Red flag, blue numeric value means it's fallen out of tolerance, but it's back within spec, all right, right now. Okay, that black screen that appeared was a recording of live data. And while I'm at it, remember our job card down the bottom here, which I saved with the PDF? Touch that, look, there's the demonstration vehicle being recorded. So it's actually recorded a live data video, okay? Straight to the vehicle, job card, on our software. Remember, you can back this up on the USB stick. Right, home screen, bottom left, back to scanner. That's going to take me back where we left off. If I drop one of these graphs down, the arrows next to the vehicle PID, the red vertical line is going to indicate that's where your tolerance exceeded a good known value, which we know what that should look like. And every other PID, if I drop down, They'll always jump to the top, guys. You see, I clicked on engine speed and it was beneath and it jumps to the top. So fuel control opening percentage value, look, jumps to the top. But notice the gray vertical line. That's going to relate to where my red vertical cursor follow or fall out of tolerance. Okay, so it's visually going to help me diagnostically relate all the other parameters. Okay, so that's what smart data is. Back left, top left up, excuse me, go to exit. I could go back into smart data, which I don't want to. I could wander off down here anywhere on the vehicle. Top left again, I want to go back. I want to come back to our landing screen. Next one down from here is functional tests and reset procedures. So again, we've noticed certainly over the last few years, if I give it a try, because we basically capture all our own software, right? And we've noticed that a lot of the OE factory tools are starting to put certain functions and features in perhaps the least expected place. So they might put a particular function in a module you kind of least expect it to be. So again, everything you need, nothing you don't. Fast track intelligent diagnostics. If we have this information from that code, based on what you guys have just seen, if you remember, my common denominator at my top repairs graph was injector. So we're going to make the assumption now that, hey, you know, if you're going to replace that, you're probably going to need to program a new one in once you've replaced it. This could be anything. It could be we've got a misfire now and I need to reset fuel trims. It'll be in here, for example. It could be a window regulator issue and there's a functional test to check the functionality of that regulator. Okay, does it make a noise when I activate that solenoid, for example, hypothetically? But yeah, so this is the idea. We isolate it into one icon. Oh, no updates, that's good. Right, so top left, if I then come down, guiding component tests, we'll expand on that in a second. 13 years we've been collecting this, and I want to address that we collect this out in the field ourselves. We don't purchase this in. And as I said earlier, if you picked up right at the very start, I was heavily involved in this for those 6 years when I started at Snap-on, my first sort of 6 years of my career. So guided component tests, scroll down, give it a try. So, you know, it's going to say we need to test that injector. We don't want you ordering a £300 Ford Galaxy injector from Ford's and then getting it wrong, right? So we need to test it. Component information, DC, we'll dig into these in a little while. Signature test, that's the integrity, isn't it? And then current ramp. It's going to be a current ramp test on the injector because the injector is classed as an output, right? So we have inputs and outputs. Then we have inputs like cam, crank, boost pressure, intake air temperature, mass airflow. They're all inputs. They send the information back to the ECM. Whereas if we take a fuel pump, solenoid, actuator, that sort of stuff, they're classed as outputs. And fundamentally, the engine ECU dictates current flow through to those components depending on the input information to denote how much requirement is needed for our fuel pump, injectors, etc. Right? So in this case, if we know how much current flowing through our injector is actually going on, then we get a nice, good, true analogy. Actually, is that component doing any work or is it not? Because remember, an injector, it could have voltage sent to it, but really I want to know what current's flowing through it. Is it actually doing anything? And the beauty is with a scope, it'll generate a waveform, and that waveform gives me a true analogy of what exactly is going on with that component. Now we use an amps clamp for that. I'll get to that in a second. There's a load of amps clamps, but I'm going to talk about one in particular, and I want to talk about the one in particular because I know firsthand the company used this from an engineering perspective when we was collecting the content for guided component tests, because this is the one I used. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool. General everyday testing, unless you're into like milliamps, you've got battery drains and stuff like that, you know, over 2 or 3 nights, customer complaint, and you're scratching your head, you know, hey, maybe you need to look at a thermal imager, for example. That's a pretty cool idea. But anyway, amps clamp, milliamps. High amps, 3000 amps, they do one up to 3000 amps, maybe our heavy goods, cranking and that sort of stuff. But anyway, we'll get to that in a sec. Our range, these tests in quantity will be denoted by how the circuit or component operates, of course. So they mean more or less, depends on said component. Okay, back, top left. Top left again, takes me down to the 3 C's, complaint, cause, and correction. Okay, this is associated sure track at the graph at the top repairs, complaint, cause, and correction. This happens to be this fault code. I've got all the credentials from my Peugeot 1.6 9AZ, and I'm then taking it into here. All I've done is gone to Intelligent Diagnostics, gone to the bottom of the screen, clicked OEM repair information, and it automatically should now bring everything over. Okay, so this is our repair information screen, remember? So there's my Peugeot, look, guys, 407 1.6 9AZ P0087, and it's going to give me an option now, right? So I'm sure you know this, but over the left, repair information, repair data, sorry, maintenance. So frequency, service intervals, what do I need to check? Do I need to change the pollen filter or do I not? API rating for oil quantities, drain plugs, repair data. If you've ever changed a timing belt on an XYZ car before, it's worth having a look. There's repair information in there. There's a nice step through sort of removal and installation process of a timing belt, let's say, using this Peugeot anyway. And there's also drawings associated, and it also gives you the timing pins, the OE part numbers for the timing bins. Electronics, so wiring diagrams, test plans, we'll get to them in a second, and smart data. On the left here is your OEM campaigns, recalls, and technical service bulletins, okay? So I'm going to pick the top one. It does look, if you notice my Peugeot, it is kind of derived from the year that's applicable. So I'll just pick the top one because I want to show you some of the features in case you was unaware. So that was kind of directing me towards a fuel pressure delivery issue. So I'm going to go with control valve. Now over here, look, it's isolated circuit. E1's going to be my engine control module. We've got a motor there, look, yeah, valve control motor, mass airflow, incorporating intake air temperature there, look. And this one, the red box, is going to be our fuel pressure control valve. Okay, so that's red. Notice we've got pin 1 and pin 2. All right. Over the left, it's going to say, right, diagnosis, check the supply voltage, shows me where to put the probes and the multimeter. And it says, right, over here, should it be, I don't want to read it word for word, X and Y voltage, yes and no. Last test. And you'll always find at the end of the test here, there's all, if in case the answer is no, you've got to be redirected to somewhere else. In this case, it's telling me that I need to go to the engine control module. I'm not going to do these 7 or 8 checks, whatever there is. But whilst we're at engine control module, if you take a look at pin data now, ECU pin data, both control unit and connector side, and all the pins are underneath. And if I then click on the word show, you've guessed it, if I go back up, and also I might add, very similar to most tablets these days, this is pinch and zoom in the repair information. You can actually see my fingers that have been held on the screen. Okay, so pinch and zoom. Obviously, you may or may not have noticed the top right corner as well. Everything in the repair information always has print at the top right corner. All right, so you can print it if you've got your Zeus connected to a network printer, hardwired via USB, or however you've got it set up. Or obviously you could download this, because we're viewing my Zeus locally as a PDF directly onto the Zeus itself. So location is going to tell me where the engine ECU is and all the other modules associated. You can tell my son's at home, can't you? Look at the internet. Picture. Okay, so there's a picture, obviously, of our engine ECU and component information. So it's worth noting, actually, a couple of times over here, I've been on a component, say fuel pressure sensor, and it's actually giving me the live data readings and oscilloscope waveform settings. So it's pretty cool. It's worth definitely having a look at. Okay, so if I just close this, so I'm going to close this now, hit the cross to close that down. He says, I don't want to keep pressing it, do you, Steve? No, because this is where it all goes wrong. There we go. Okay, so if I now go to top left and go to cars, you'll see there's a registration look up at the top right. Now, you know, there's so much of it, to be fair, in here. You can even go into settings. Oh, my cursor's having a wobbly now. Go to settings, go to preferences, and tailor your account settings. So when you print from this information suite, that also has all your business details. You can even build up invoicing incorporated in this information suite on your Zeus. And you can euros, pounds, VAT, quantity, there's loads of stuff you can do. Just need to have a look, guys, at this and spend a bit of time in here. So I wanted to do, because I'm, again, still got quite a bit to do, but is putting a registration in here. Now, you can see there's a few oddball manufacturers down there, which we could look at, but I do, and I'm still hung up over this. This registration I put in, I do think it was last month. We're in May. It must have been May. I was live in front of customers like I am now. And this is my company vehicle registrations, hybrid Corolla. And I put the registration in, click the button. And I was just randomly put it in. And I was like, oh my God. And this is ironic because the TSBs here, I clicked on and I was like, no way, adaptive cruise. Now, for a little while now, I've been noticing it's due to its service. I think it's done 16,500 miles roughly. These Corollas are every 10,000, so it'll go in soon. It won't take long, I'm sure, to get that up now. But anyway, there's been occasions when it's switched on, I'm following a car, let's say they indicate, they turn off, the car brakes fine, they've now gone, they've made their decision, they've gone, but the car still drags the brakes on for far too long, in my opinion, and then it starts to accelerate. So I don't know what that's about, but I happened to see this, and I clicked the button. I was like, oh, that's strange. So they've obviously got some sort of issue related to the radar sensor, but it is quite cool because it says I need to check the serial number. And obviously, I'm not going to remove my bumper and start having a look, because I've got to do that to get to mine on the Corolla. And so I'm not going to do that, because obviously I need to calibrate it. Although I could do it at work, but it's irrelevant. But if I look down here, it's saying I need to check the serial number. Okay, so it's on that plate. And over here, check the value of the digit shown. Continue. Right, that's the digit I need to pay attention to, or to do. Then it says here, action required if the value is as shown under 5. All right, so renew the sensor. So I am quite curious to see what the outcome is when it goes back. Definitely. Okay, anyway, right, so bottom left, I'm going to press change vehicle. Okay, and then I'm going to hit scope multimeter. Now, unfortunately, I've left that still from the last time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my camera. I've got so many things on the go here. Hey, right, let's get this shut down. Shut down. Oh, hang on a minute. Is that because it's open somewhere else? Right, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Okay, right, so on our home screen now, I'm going to go into LabScope, if you happen to be with me. Yes, there is a few options here, presets. You can actually save your own presets. So maybe you go into the blank scope multimeter, you spend a while setting something up, and you think, I've got it. Oh, I'm going to forget this next time round. I test a mass airflow. You can actually save it and then save it as a preset and name that file. But I'm going to go into scope multimeter or lab scope. I'm going to choose 4-channel lab scope. Now you'll hear that noise. That's the scope calibrating the circuit board, little relays, cleaning the contacts. If you've never been in here before, guys, you will probably see something like this. And I don't know if you've seen that, or that, but I would suspect if you've never been in here before, probably what I'm looking at right now. So we've got 4 channels that switched on, i.e. we can test 4 components at once. Now, I've only got my waveform board connected to 1 component, so I'm going to switch off my channels that I don't require. So this button down here at the bottom right, if you hover over it, it says touch to shrink, expand, detail view. Basically, there's a few options at the top that says setup, data. You kind of can do the same thing, but you can tweak a little bit more fine tune at the top, if you will. But I just wanted to fluctuate this button for the sake of what we're doing, right? So we've got this screen here is adjustment, right? We're going to change some values, okay? This screen is full screen scope, and this screen is data. I'm going to measure something utilizing the scope, all right? Data, diagnostic data, let's call it. Okay, so data to change, we're going to make a change, full screen scope, and then data that we're going to evaluate from a diagnostic point of view. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these channels off. Over here, under word profile, to switch off everyone other than my yellow one. The reason is because if I now do this, Zoom's quite cool these days. It's come a long way. Look, second camera. You can see that I have my Zeus next to me. I have my waveform generator board here, a little car. And I had these probes connected to the top. And so the reason I've done this is very, very quickly just to show you how to connect up your scope, because I do not want customers to damage their Zeus module, their scope module. And I basically in a classroom at this point in the afternoon, so it's a set of customers, right, get all the Zeus scope leads out of the kit and connect them up to the Zeus how you think they should be connected. And it was brilliant because Obviously, everyone would look around at everyone else, all the peers, you know, make sure they don't do anything wrong. And the answer is there is no right and wrong. Not really, because you'll get the same answer if I leave this hanging. I'll get the same answer if I put them both in. I'll get the same answer if I just put this one in and take this one out. Because if you look, guys, I've got 2 black leads and I've got 1 on the other end. So it's a common ground. But I would like you to do what I've done. That's a flat right angle probe. And this one's got like a stalk on the end. Okay. So pull that one out. So that it's perfectly got right angle probe. Pop that in there. And the reason is when you get the yellow probe out and you go to connect that up, because maybe one day when you get into your scope, you think, I want to test the cam and crank sensors simultaneously and check if the timing's out. So maybe I want to see if the belt's jumped or chain stretched, or because that's pretty cool. Some nice feature you could do with a Zeus with a scope. And maybe you think you want to do that. You put in your green lead, and the green lead has another black lead which needs to be grounded. So what I'm asking you to do is, if you'd be so kind, to just piggyback your green lead, associate black lead onto this one. That way you don't end up with a massive stalk up here. Because what I have seen over the past years is customers do that, they connect it like that, and then you guessed it, they're in a footwell testing accelerated pedal position sensor one day, accidentally lean on the Zeus, and there's a crunch, and I bet your bottom dollar it will not be the leads that break. It will be the leads that cause the scope module internally, because that's plugged in. It'll be a nasty little crunch, and it'll be a Zeus module that goes down, and then sadly it'll have to be sent for repair. And then obviously they're going to say, hey, you know, what was happening here? So from my end, just try and keep these all nice and flat and nice and neat. Right. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to go back to my Zeus, and I'll probably go back to my camera. I was just thinking, can I do that now? No, we need to come back to here. Right, moving across the settings, channel 1. All right, so I'm on channel 1. I'm going to test one component, yellow in color. Next over is probe. If I touch on probe, now at this stage, I can't see you guys, of course, but in a classroom, people would frown now. Vacuum pressure. Yeah. Now the scope, obviously, we have the blank canvas scope that you guys get in a kit, and you have the 4-channel scope leads, you have ignition probe, your little copper adapter, coil over plug, but there's loads of accessories you can get with a scope if you're into it. And one and foremost is a transducer, and the transducer implicates we can test vacuum and pressure. So if we think of vacuum, we think of a MITI-vac that some of you guys may be using currently. If you think of an old diaphragm EGR valve, like an old PD Volkswagen lump, right? You'd put the analog gauge in there, wouldn't you? And apply some vacuum and see if your analog gauge holds pressure, and you'd be happy the diaphragm isn't leaking, right? So the scope will do that. If you think of compression testing, if we talk about pressure, I would assume that most of you are watching will utilize an analog gauge and then pop it in a spark plug hole, glow plug, however we're testing it, petrol, diesel, or whatever. And yeah, you know, crank it over for the accelerator, kill ignition, that sort of stuff. Look at percentage, cross-relate it all the cylinders. Hey, you know, that one cylinder 4 is a bit lower, whatever it happens to be. Well, again, with a transducer kit, you can actually screw it in the spark plug hole, and instead of just seeing a numeric value, you can actually see the inlet valves opening and closing, BDC, TDC on the scope. It's quite cool, bit of maths involved, measuring, but it's cool if you get into it. And then amps clamp. So we've already discussed this loosely. We're going to get to that very briefly again in a minute, which is when I project my camera again to the amps clamp. And ignition. So the yellow and black lead that I've got my scope currently attached to is the leads in the kit that does not have the fly lead, the crocodile clip that's insulated. You've got 2 yellow and black leads. One of them's got quite thicker, that's the ignition one, and it has a crocodile clip, a black insulated crocodile clip. That's your ignition lead, all right? So when you connect that to the scope, just as I've done here, you need to make sure that you ground that crocodile clip before you start waving the end of that lead around, right? Because you start messing with ignition systems now, and I'd hate to see you get a shock, you know? Yeah, you should have got a little pink jiffy bag, little copper adapter, coilover plug, looks like a circuit board, printed circuit board with a little blue fly lead on the end of it. That plugs in, one end only plugs into the ignition lead, all right? And then you'll see on the circuit board, there's two sides. One says to reduce signal, one says to increase signal. There's no right or wrong way. Rest it on the core pack. Do I get a signal? No, flick it over the other way, or vice versa. And then obviously from this far point of view, whilst you're on it, we're obviously looking for a signal that looks far different to the other three, yeah? But anyway, let's stick with our test leads at the top, volts DC. I'm going to press back, moving across, peak detect. If I click on that, what looks like little mountains appear. And what's happening when you click that is the scope is sampling at its current fastest rate, which is 6 million times a second. Yes, I did say 6 million times a second. So I want to put that in context very quickly. And that being, if we take a standard class 4 voltmeter, generally you'll find if you look at the instructions and somewhere get into the specs, I'm fairly confident it'll sample at 250 milliseconds. So 4 times a second, it'll take a refresh and plot that reading on the screen. Now, if we talk about a petrol injector on a petrol car, modern car, 10-year-old car, right? The time base, the setting on the scope is going to be approximately 10 or 20 milliseconds to see that injector open and close once. Now, I've already just told you the voltmeter, if we was to back probe that injector, is going to sample at 250. Now, I don't want to do the maths. How many 20s, let's say, are in 250? I don't need to. What I do know is the injector has opened and closed a lot of times before my voltmeter has even registered a difference. So let's put that in practice. Think about this. If you take your voltmeter when you leave here tomorrow, if you've got the luxury of doing so, get your voltmeter out. And there'll be 2 leads off your voltmeter, right? Get a petrol car, start it up. Put 2 pins on that injector. 12 volts ignition feed and a switch ground from the transistor and the ECM. Back probe your red, let's call it red or yellow, whatever color it is, your positive lead. Back probe the switch ground wire. So stick it in one, flat 12 or 14 volts reach, car running, not that one. Stick it in the other one. That's going to be the switch ground. And then the black lead, obviously on the chassis ground. I reckon you'll see 14.2, 0.3, 0.2, 0.4, 0.1, and it'll fluctuate that decimal point. But that ain't really what's happening, which we're going to get to. All right. So 250 milliseconds. Peak detect samples 6 million times on your Zeus. And what we see with the squiggly line on our oscilloscope is fundamentally dot to dot. That's what we need to think of. So when we see a line, think of that dot to dot and all those dots being joined up. And that line is, hey, are we doing something or not? It's just how we evaluate it and how we interpret it. Okay, so moving over, filter, getting a little bit geeky now. Map sensors, mass airflow sensors, if they're analog especially, which most still are. However, I rephrase that, there is quite a few digital mass airflows about now. They have been about for quite a few years. But if my quote here is an analog mass airflow, definitely an analog map sensor. When you scope those 2 components, roughly 1 to 1.5 volt at idle or snap the throttle, there'll be a steep incline up to about 4 volts. On the way up, to do with manifold depression, you get this massive steep curve, and the signal on the scope can look quite noisy. Lots of zigzag. You don't want that. You want to clean that up. So it's important though, guys, actually. You need to clean it up though, but that is important. Believe it or not, you can actually identify if the inlet valves are sticking just from looking on that incline. Now, I'll prove that later on. I'll show you some stuff later on that's already incorporated in your Zeus. If you was unaware, it's already in there, this information. So I'm going to hit filter and that'll clean the signal up. Invert, right. New share, double camera, second camera, back over to this. Now, this is the EETA 308D amps clamp. And as I said, I'm not trying to sell it, guys. I'm just merely saying, in my own humble opinion, from everyday testing, This is all you'll need. Everyday testing. I'm not talking about doing the geeky stuff. Just petrol, current draw, parasitic draw, battery drains, run of the mill, you know, injector testing, relays, fuel pumps. This is your kiddie. Now, the reason I wanted to show you it though is when you scope on the setting that said inverted on my scope, we'll get to it in a sec, back to it a sec. There was a button that said inverted. Now it's asking me to put this amps clamp around the correct polarity of the circuit. Which way in the circuit does the current flow? And then sometimes when you're in the engine bay with this, let's say I was testing an injector and I wanted to look at the current flow in the injector, I couldn't put it around the correct way because there might have been 2 or 3 other bracketries, wiring loom, harness, clips, and I just want to get this wire around, right? I just wanted to get this clamp around that wire quickly. I didn't want to spend 20 minutes, half an hour taking the car apart just to get this around. But if I flicked it upside down, I was able to get it on the incorrect way. And what would happen is the waveform on the scope would be inverted upside down. And then I'd click the word invert on the scope and it'll present it the correct way. And if you look, guys, you can just see, try and get my light, can you see the arrow right in the top of the jaws here? Look. And that's what it's asking for. Which way is the polarity in the circuit? Okay, so that's the EETA 308D. Cracking bit of kit that. Right, so back to my scoop. There you go. Right, so yeah, inverted. So I click that and it would flick up the image the correct way. AC coupling, again, not to deviate to advanced diagnostics, but there is a lot of reasons why you might want to switch that on when it comes to advanced oscilloscope diagnostics. But from an everyday testing, I can think of only one component you'd need to switch that on. If I think of general testing in the engine bay, all the components, boost pressure, actuators, accelerator, pedal, throttle potentiometers, throttle motors, EGR valves, EGR position sensors, mass airflow map, I could go on. If I think of all of those, it's only one, and it'll be an active wheel speed sensor. So 20 years ago now, they still have 2 wires, don't they? Wheel speed sensors. 20 years ago, though, they'd have 2 wires and there'd be an AC waveform generator component. The actual component itself would generate its own voltage with coil windings in the sensor. And as the magnet passed, it would obviously generate voltage. As you spun the wheel, even faster you spun it, the amplitude would increase, i.e. the voltage would get larger, and the frequency, right? So the more of these little squiggly lines, these oscillating, alternating current lines, we would see, all right? But now, most cars now, and when I say most, I'm probably digging 10 years ago, easily I'd make that quote. There might be the odd couple of manufacturer models, but general rule, most will have active wheel speed sensors. So if you check these out now, they're not AC, they're digital, right? So if you put the key on engine off, all of them will have 2 wires, and one wire will be a 12-volt supply and the other one will be a ground. But what they don't tell you is some manufacturers put the signal wire down the 12-volt supply wire, not the ground. The ones that put the ground signal down the ground wire, I don't need to press AC coupling. I press AC coupling because that removes the DC portion from the 12-volt supply wire. So if the signal's on the 12-volt supply, AC coupling, 12 volts disappears, leaves me with the signal, okay? But we've already done this on the wheel speed sensors if you're using guided component tests, okay? Moving across to voltage. 400 volts is our maximum. That's your wasted spark, your ignition systems, all right? You shouldn't need any more than that. Everyday testing. Your fundamental everyday stuff that you guys should see, and then right the way down to 100 millivolts, of course. Most of the stuff I would think you're probably going to be pitching 5, 10 to 20 volts. Obviously, ignition system, we're up here, right? Petrol injectors, diesel injectors, 50, 100 volts. Okay, and then slope is going to make sense when I press this button. So I've now got my waveform generator board. We are connected to a petrol injector. Before we continue, just draw your attention to the white numeric value at the bottom right corner where it says milliseconds, 20. I want to touch on that. So very, very quickly, if we look up here, it looks like a funny US. Okay, so that stands as a symbol for microseconds. Just to mash your heads hopefully a little bit, that's millionths of a second. Okay, so not milliseconds down here, which we're probably used to from motorsport, right? We're now talking micro. All right, so to put that in context, 200 microseconds is your standard CAN bus protocol speed. 2.0A standard CAN, you'd need to be on 200 microseconds to capture a waveform. Okay, so right the way up to 20 seconds. So obviously if I hit 20 seconds, whatever's going on my signal is going to take 20 seconds to get to the end here, and it will start plotting again back over there. Okay, so I'm going to go to 20. I'm not going to blame my boy. He's obviously having a, doing something. There you go. We're back. We're back. We're back. Right, 20 milliseconds. Okay, back to my injector. Now the slope, what you didn't touch on, relates to this trigger. This cross is a trigger. So years ago, we used to have, if I'm 45 years old, before I say this quote, hence the grey hair, I was about with the, before electronic ignition. So I'm very familiar back in the day with condensers and points and distributors and a strobe light. And the trigger is the same principle as a strobe light, for those of you watching who remember that. The trigger acts as a strobe light. The strobe light used to illuminate for us as techs to identify how and where I needed to be regarding our advanced or retired with our strobe light, right? So much like that, the scope can see a pattern, it can see something's happening, but it needs a trigger point to hold that image static for us to evaluate from a diagnostic point of view. So let me just quickly put that into context. If I drag this cross over to here and drop it there, it'll plot it there. But if I drag this cross, look well above its peak voltage, its highest point, if I just go past that and then take my finger off, you can see now it's no longer static. If you keep looking, there you go, it still sees it and it knows something's going on, but it has no way of holding it static. So I need to bring that trigger down, and based on wherever I position it, it's going to plot it accordingly. Okay, so I'll go with there. Right, so this is our petrol injector. Okay, guys, so what's going on? Remember I said 2 wires, 12-volt supply and 1 switch ground transistor. I'm now back probing our fictitious switch ground. So we go over the left, vehicle's running, what's going on? Roughly 14 volts, 14.25, whatever it happens to be. And then the ECM commands the injector to be switched on. Okay, switch on. Pulls the circuit down to ground, which is why we see roughly down as close as we can get to 0 volts, because that's what you want. And then this bit here is arguably the duration of which the ECM has commanded the injector to be on. We refer to it, posh talk, as pulse width or injector on time. And then the ECM switches the injector off. Okay, so much like an ignition coil, all that voltage that's stored in the coil windings of our injector, it creates what we call electromotive force, or inductive kick as a posh term. That massive spike appears on a real car. Actually, bear in mind we're using a 9-volt battery on a waveform board. If this is a 12-volt, that'd be more like 70 volts on a real car. Okay, so massive inductive kick. And then thinking now inside of our internals of our injector, the injector's now coming back down at a high rate. It's got a spring behind it as well, isn't it? We've got pressure that's just been deposited. It's coming down to smash on the seat. The problem is it comes down at such a rate, we need something to control that speed, that rate. And that's where you cannot see, but there should be on a real car. The real car, inside the ECM, there's a little diode, and it looks like a little camel hump here, and it governs that rate. Okay, otherwise it would bust the injector to pieces. And then the whole thing back to 15, 14.5 volts, our example, and we're back to another event. Okay, so as you can see, 20 milliseconds, could be 10 milliseconds, 10, 20, you know, But again, voltmeter 250, injector, peak detect 6 million. Right, so from an injector point of view, let's measure our injector on time. So I'm going to go to cursors. I'm going to press show, go back, and you'll see there's two vertical lines. And all you need to do is press and hold these, press and hold again, and then we'll get our measurement. Now, nothing's come up, has it? No. If you come down here and then hover over this, remember I said this fluctuates, full screen scope. And it's already come up, my Zeus is a delay. There we go. I now have some measurement data. So let's have a look. Cursor 1, 6.28. Well, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8. So there's 6. That makes sense. 8.27. Yeah, that makes sense. So what is delta? You've guessed it. Subtract 6.28 from 8.27. We should be left with 1.99 milliseconds. Is that right? Is it good? Well, we're using a waveform board. If it was a real car, and on the assumption it's a closed loop, it's up to temperature, there's nothing wrong with the vehicle, I would expect to see around about 2.5, 2.6, 2.7 milliseconds. Actually, whilst I'm looking at the board, if I just use the potentiometer, this is actually what a petrol car would look like if you snap the throttle stationary. So I'm snapping the throttle, and all that happens, you can see that the ground, the pulse width gets larger. Okay. Okay, so let's put that back roughly. Okay, and then frequency. We all seem to forget about frequency. Frequency is measured in hertz, and 1 hertz is the same as saying once on and off per second, if you will. Okay, whatever we're talking about is operated once per second. Every time I say that, when I'm looking at the scope, I always think of a zirconia O2 sensor, which has been around and still is today on a 2021 car, right the way back to 2011. There'll be 4 wires on this zirconia sensor. There'll be a 12-volt supply. There'll be a switch ground for the heater from the ECM. There'll be a signal wire, which is the one I'm now thinking of referring to. And there'll be a ground for the sensor. All right. So let's think of that. So before we deviate, so let's go to guided component tests, thinking of our zirconia sensor. Now, before we do, I've got the scope open in scope multimeter. I'm about to open it up in guided component tests. Well, we can't have the scope open in 2 different icons simultaneously. All right, so I need to press power off. Up here to cursors, I'm just going to switch these off. Back to hide, bottom left, back to the house. Guided component tests. I'm going to go to Europe, and then we're going to have a quick dip into how-tos, okay, because this will also take me into our guided component test, which we'll look at in a sec. I just want to hold that thought when I said we're looking at our scope, and I said zirconia sensor, right? So if I come from here, these are all, as I said earlier, tutorials. You'll find a lot of these incorporated in these tutorials will have live data or oscilloscope tests associated to them. Definitely have a look. What I wanted to show you though, guys, is it's a NOx accumulator one. It's pretty cool. 15-minute waveform class. Firstly, let's look at injector. We'll get to the O2 sensor. So we've just done this as a quick summary, really, didn't we? We'll give a bit of an overview, what I did, electric motive force. I don't want to read it. I'm just trying to say, guys, it's in there step by step. And there's quite a few of these in here, to be fair. So when you're scoping stuff, what does that mean? What does it look like? What should it look like? Bottom left corner, view meter, so the scope calibrates. Top left, go back again. O2 sensor, zirconia. Remember, again, grey hair, carburetors, 14.7 to 1, something we don't hear these days. Switch metric, you can see at the bottom, there is a resemblance, air-fuel ratio. That's its job, isn't it? Okay, it's trying, our O2 sensors are ultimately trying to maintain 14.7 to 1, all right? So when we think of an O2 sensor, 0.1 of a volt from a signal wire means a lean mixture, 0.8 is a rich. So when I said 1 Hertz, if you look here, a good sensor should switch from rich to lean approximately once per second, or 1 Hertz. So now you know when we look over here, 1 to 2. Basically, if we had this on an oscilloscope now, I would probably have a 2-volt scale here, and I would have a 5-second time base. Really want the vehicle up closed loop, 2000 RPM, hold the throttle, 4 wires, remember. 12 volt, flat line, not interested. Square wave, heater, not interested at this stage, just to test the switching speed of our sensor. Flat line near 0 volts, ground. The other wire should look something like this. And then what you want to do is put your cursors on, which we've just done, and then position them so that they're evenly spaced at 1 second intervals. So one at number 2 seconds, the other one at number 3, or 3 or 4, etc. And you want this hump here to fall within that. So if this any place falls past our vertical cursors, then I would suspect your O2 sensor is switching too slow, and we might need to have a closer inspection. All right, so it's obviously working a little bit lazy. Okay, so back from here, map sensor. I made a quote earlier, didn't I? Okay, so I said something about manifold depression, I think. Yes, I did. Inlet valves, there you go. 0.1 waveform, manifold depression. Presence of the ripples in the waveform is a good indication of the condition of the inlet valves. Faulty or sticking valve. Anomaly in the ripples. So there you go. View meter, scope calibrates. I come back from there, back from there again. Something I get asked about. CAN bus. We can test the physical layer of CAN bus at the 16-pin data link connector we guys plug into using your Bluetooth module. 15-minute waveform, a lot of bedtime reading. Apologies, 20-minute CAN bus. It's a lot of bedtime reading in here, to be fair. When I think of 20-minute CAN bus, if you're not familiar with it, the architecture, 20-minute CAN bus, geeky stuff, arbitration, error handling, signal quality. All right. I just want to take a look at waveforms. So let's assume we have a communication problem, done a code scan, and we're starting to think, is it the scan tool? Well, as I said, we are now aligned. Most of the cars you plug it into have to have CAN, network integrity to communicate with the scan tool. So sometimes if there's a CAN problem, no comms. So let's assume we get comms and we have a module that we suspect is not communicating. Maybe it's a BCM or whatever module it happens to be. Next, ideally, we should get to the 16-pin, right? So this at the top here is a representation of a good example. I don't really want to get into this now. We probably spend a few hours talking about CAN and baud rates and speed and signal quality and all sorts, but all I'm looking for really here at the 16-pin is a mirror image. Okay, so a symmetrical mirror image. The yellow one is CAN high, pin 6. Green one is pin 14, CAN low. So the 16-pin. And what we've done in this case study, in this tutorial, is kind of given the end user, obviously we can't tell you what the problem is, we'd love to, but we've given you an example of a sentence associated to every poor representation that you might see on the oscilloscope. So we're using 2 channels now, aren't we? We're using the yellow and the green simultaneously. Now, you might be thinking, as I would be this stage, that's cool, he's just showing me on the scope. How do I know to set this up? So on the tutorial, come all the way down the bottom, all the way down the bottom. There you go, pin 6, 14, black channel to ground, key on, engine off, yellow 2.5 to 3.5 volts, 1.5 to 2.5, yeah? And then you've guessed it, scroll down, view meter. Now, if you remember when we was evaluating this, I said to you guys, when I was going through the time-based settings on the scope, the time base for a standard CAN protocol is 2.0A with 200 microseconds. So you can see that preset time base 200 microseconds is that funny US And over here, they're staggered because we need them to get the mirror image, can't have them overlaying each other, right? And 5-volt scale, all right? So you need 5-volt, don't we? Okay, so now, though, we could, couldn't we, hypothetically, let's assume we have a comms issue, we could go to the 16-pin, physically track down said module, which we're doubting or querying in our heads. Is there a communication problem? And let's just assume, as a quick job, we unplug that module with the ignition on. Yeah, and let's assume we do that. Let's now assume we have our perfect mirror image appear at the top left, which is right in front of us now. Now we know, do we not? All right, I might be holding on 50 wires, but I now know one of those 50 wires is the issue, or the connection to said module. The point is, before I did this, I didn't have a Scooby-Doo. I didn't have a clue. Could have been anywhere on the vehicle. Okay, or maybe I did like a wiggle test, you know, maybe I identified the module and wiggled the wires while I was looking at the scope. Okay, food for thought, guys, because it's something that I would certainly consider if you have or suspect a CAN problem. Okay, so back from here. Now go back to the home screen, but please have a look in here if you're unfamiliar. Just before I do, I'm conscious of time. There is down here, because I don't think customers are too aware of it when I talk about it, vehicle-related diagnostic case studies. I don't want you to look, but just bear in mind where it is, okay? Guided component tests, training and classes, how to, that was the path. And then vehicle-related case studies, okay? Okay, so there's the path up here. These are all captured out in the field. Most of these are utilized in the scope from a diagnostic point of view. There's all stuff we found. I don't want to go through them all, but you kind of get the gist, guys. There's a few in there. Look, there's quite a few in there, to be fair. A few oddball ones. Anyway, all right. Now I want to, bottom left, I want to very quickly go into guided component tests and just prove my theory. We're going to choose a petrol injector because we know all about those now. 2012, Rio, double AB cam, that'll have one. 1.4 engine injector. Just quickly, you know, we just done the whole 16-pin thing, didn't we? So D-Link connector, component information. So how many of us knew watching this that was incorporated in the software? Maybe you did, I don't know. This is where I can't see you. Okay, but yeah, you know, there's the information you need. What pins what, circuit test, CAN bus, signal, out of range, suggesting resistors in the network, 58 to 62 ohms. Okay, I want to come back from that though. Where I was going was injector. I want to go straight to signature test. Please take a note though, guys, the component information. How does it work? Where is it? What pin is what at this component? 12-volt supply on this one, pin 2, switch ground. Is it direct or indirect injection? That's going to dictate where the actual injector's fitted. Is it in the head, in the manifold? Yeah. Or best test location down here, maybe we couldn't get to the injector. So maybe it was tested at harness connector, or maybe it was even tested at the engine ECU. Because I believe me, guys, some of these tests were. I can vividly remember a few BMWs 3 Series that I did at the engine ECU. I can vividly remember a Land Rover V8 that I did at the engine ECU at the kick panel. So top left, go back. And signature test. Pin 2, ground. There, if you actually look closely, that there's that little hump that I was referring to. That little hump there. Anyway, look, 14 volts to 0. So in your heads, remember we started a voltage, then we pulled down to ground, and then we had our electromotive force, didn't we? Inductive kick, 70 volts. And then if you scroll down, guys, view meter. Now these are make model, again, make model year, captured out in the field. All right. So we don't buy all textbook this is captured in the field. All right. So please take a look at it if you've never seen it or never used it. Right, everybody, I'm very conscious of time. I think I'm looking, I've got a little notepad next to me and I keep glancing over it and I'm going, Wi-Fi set up, control base file. I think I'm pretty much there and I'm very conscious that I've got 2 minutes to 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit stop And I'm going to ask if there is anyone that has any questions. There's quite a few of you on tonight, which is cool. And if I have any questions and I can do my damnedest to answer them, I will do my damnedest to answer them right now. If no one has any questions, I would greatly like to appreciate you all taking your time out this evening to join me. Much appreciated. There's nothing worse than the prospect of running these events and then no one's on the other end to watch, right? So yeah, really appreciate that. If there's any refreshes or any time you guys want to come back, I do these every month. Obviously the format is going to be much the same. Well, whilst we're talking about Zeus training, just remember they're totally free, guys. You just got to register on the website. I'll be here next month. Actually, I tell a lie, a colleague of mine is stepping in for me next month, Eric. Because I've got some other work commitments that I need to do. But yeah, I am generally here every month. So if there's anything I can do, please come back. You know, if there's any refreshes or anything. Okay, so whilst I've been waffling, no one has given me any questions. Now they say no news is good news. Okay, Steve Nichols. Oh, cool. Is that like that, is it? Or is that stop? Cool. I assume there's no questions or anything. I'm assuming, guys, no news is good news. And if that was a happy day, Steve, thank you very much. And just checking. Yeah, I think, guys, I think I'm all clear. So as I said, no news is good news, right? So yeah, just on that note, before I go, guys, again, thank you very much. Seriously, thank you very much. And look out for your professional development certificate, and just be mindful that if you've not had it, certainly middle of next week, stroke the end of next week, at the very, very latest, send an email in to the UK custom training, which you guys see in the register. It'll actually land on my plate, guys, so bear with me and I'll get an email out and we'll decipher what's going on, but it should be grand. All right. Yes, thank you very much, and hopefully in the near future we can come back with some other topics. That's my hope. All right, but the powers to be will do. We'll decide what we do. All right, thank you very much indeed. This time I am going. No one has given me any questions. And again, Steve, if that was a happy days, then thank you very much indeed. Take care, guys. Much appreciated. I am going. Bye.